Good evening, viewers. Welcome to another session of Mazungumzo with your host, Dr. Gilbert Gicharu Githere. Now we are doing part 15. I know you can't believe it. Those people who are following, first of all, how to select a narrow topic. Because Martin Heidegger is a virtuoso when it comes to narrow topic, being and time. That's a mouthful. And he has covered an intense subject with only those three words. So when you're doing your doctorate, your narrow topic is the most essential thing. What are you going to call your dissertation? That's what you need to do. And now it is also teaching you other things, how to do an analysis. Because to describe who is essential pieces of the existence of Dasein or a human being, he has got so much meat. We are in part 15. So let us just continue. It is good to note that temporality is not an entity, but it has this quality. It has the ability to temporalize itself, an equivalent of time travel. Because think of yourself as a human being because you have a consciousness and you have understanding. You can back travel in time when you are younger. Maybe you are doing something, you are doing a project somewhere. You can actually revisit that time vividly with vivid pictures in your mind of what happened. Temporalizing. Temporality. Time allows us, space and time allows us and being to travel in our minds, in the past. We can even build a future just using our minds. It's a quality, human beings have. They never really think about it. But it is a big asset because what we become and the things we explore, innovate, decipher, discover, create, they all come from that facility of being able to go into the future and might see how will the planes of the future look? How will the buildings of the future look? Will they be in the ocean, under the sea, in outer space, like space shuttles? Will be houses be floating in outer space? Because we have got ample space, but we have never really gotten the science to explore how we can utilize the ample spaces we have. We keep on thinking we're going to run out of land space to build houses. No, we have ample space. But with the knowledge and science and peace and love, we will be able to reach there. Let's continue with what I was reading here. Temporalizing is the one which allows Dasein. And Dasein means human being, and at the same time is dialectical, it means existence. To be able to take many modes, especially when it comes to inauthentic and authentic existence. Because Dasein has many forms of existence. There are some Martin Heidegger calls inauthentic, and some are authentic. And they are all important and essential in our lives. And you will all come to categorize them as we get along, or we go along and we explore what we're doing. So just give me time. The words like inauthentic and authentic, they're going to become very clear. In quotes, the future, the character of having been, and the present show the phenomenal characteristics of the towards oneself in quotes, the back to in quotes, and the letting oneself be encountered by in quotes. That's all sentences brief ones, which actually mean the future. Temporality is the outside of itself and for itself. That's a mouthful right there. Because in this analysis, you find when I get to a statement which is so full of meaning, I always use the word "is so mouthful." And that's what I mean. It means a lot. You got to decipher into it. You got to become Derridian. Jacques Derrida, the deconstructionist, the guru for deconstructionism. He passed on, but he used to be at the University of South California, Irvine, in the Department of Linguistics. But he passed on. He wrote beautiful pieces of temporality. Means is the outside of itself and for itself. This is the ability to be the past, present, and future, and in general, this ability is called ecstasis of temporality. It's like the one I was telling you. The human mind has the ability to travel, time travel. Go when you are a young person. Let's say you are 10 and you used to be in a league. You used to play in a league, let's say baseball. And you can remember vividly the people you used to be with, their names and the things they used to do, and how many scores you did in one season, and who scored all those things. And vividly you can see the pictures in your mind. That's almost an ability of ecstasis. The human being can think outside of itself. That's why the consciousness, outside of ourselves and for yourself. Ecstasis. That's a very important word. We're going to meet it several times. The temporality, temporalizing, the ability to historizing to history, put it together, historizing, is all in the realm of ecstasis. Understanding, when it interprets time, it has it as a continuous series of now infinite in nature. This is a mouthful. We got to kind of digest it. Understanding is the one which allows Dasein to conceive existence, an activity it is involved in all the time. Let me read that one once again. Understanding is the one which allows Dasein to conceive existence, an activity it is involved in all the time. Understanding. Because when you are existing, you're all the time thinking. And in that thinking you're doing, you're also discovering new entities who make you up. You are made by some entities of being. Like understanding is one of them, and you acquire it. Intuition, concept, to conceptualize, to perceptualize, to a perception, to reason out, to logic out. All this to think. All these are entities who make you unique, able to exist. Without those, you will be shortchanged by life. Because you got to think fast, humans, to survive. And that's why Martin Heidegger said the most important thing is not even consciousness, is the act of existence. It's so important. The understanding allows Dasein to see itself externally. surviving in the environment. Excuse me. In understanding, Dasein uses excuse me, its biological gifts. For example, hearing, sensing, touching, smelling, to negotiate his way in everydayness survival. It is important at this juncture that I introduce the acquisition of knowledge by Dasein as time goes along, meaning entities are undisclosed to him, become unconcealed primordially. This activity is known as projection towards potentiality for being. All Dasein exist for this simple purpose. The existence of Dasein is actually possible excuse me, in acquiring knowledge. Understanding also allows Dasein to know its possibilities when it comes to existence. It acquires consciousness that allows him to comprehend its limits when it comes to the hostile environment out there. Understanding allows the future to identify entities out there which would allow future survival. Its potentiality for being, that is Dasein, allows it this inborn ability of seeing entities with possibilities for its existence. When an entity for survival presents itself to Dasein, it grasps the possibility and makes it its own. The ability to project makes Dasein futural, and this is an ability cultivated by its anticipatory resoluteness. Now, there we hit the most important two words in Heideggerian philosophy: anticipatory resoluteness. That is the core, that's the heart of existence. Because this one you will find later at the end of this discussion. It will become the center of winding up this discussion as Dasein addresses itself to its finiteness, that it has an end. The potentiality for being in whole in Dasein is incomplete because at the end it realizes it has a finite end. It has to address its end. Now, anticipatory resoluteness is a system it evolves subconsciously. In other words, when you look at this resoluteness, is the ability to kind of exist in denial. The infiniteness of Dasein makes Dasein constantly, perpetually in denial of that last end of its existence. You're going to understand it. So that statement of anticipatory resoluteness is so important. Resoluteness in existence, both primordial and authentic, it has some magical wand traits. Temporalizing for the future takes many forms. Why this behavior is because these are usually thought processes which change from time to time. Because you see, this survival of a human being as he continues doing what he's doing is a mental gymnastics. dynamics in the brain, in the mind. You're futurizing, you're presenting, and your past having been. First of all, the word having been just itself is historizing. The history of Dasein would be incomplete without the statement having been in quotes. Dasein, through acts of temporality, it sees the future where it will meet its demise through anticipation. Its state of mind, a thought process, is always set on the broader side of things. Dasein is constantly in a state of care. That's another important word for you to kind of put in your mind and remember it all the time when you're doing Martin Heidegger's reading anywhere. Care. Care is the foundation of all things human or Dasein. Even the anticipatory resoluteness is a possibility because of care. And you can imagine the word care and caring for one another, caring for the Gaia, caring for the climate that we are talking about, doing something. You're not caught unawares that the temperatures are no longer bearable. We must reduce the carbon emission, plant trees. That's why the word care doesn't give it the highest priority in man, the existence of man. That's why he exists, man, to care. And it is actually, just listen to this, is a state of head of itself. When you care, you are ahead of yourself. It's a unique quality of humans. This is a mode that allows it to be conscious about the there in your everydayness, caring for the Mother Earth. There is nothing humans are put on earth in the world as important as caring for Mother Earth and in living in its better health. And if you leave nature by itself without polluting it, you don't do much. You just don't put what you're putting that is polluting. When you leave it, it will clean the rest. It has the ability to rejuvenate itself. That's the miracle of nature. And it's an important thing to know because it's like a magic wand. Now, Dasein, through acts of temporality, it sees the future where it will meet its demise through anticipation. I think I read this before, but I just go through it quickly. Its state of mind, a thought process, it always sets on the broader side of things. Dasein is constantly in a state of chaos. This is a mode that allows it to be conscious about they and especially others. Dasein remains uncertain about its existence when it comes to the future. Humans are always uncertain about the future. Although they are working and running around, one thing which is always at the back of the mind of humans, they are uncertain about the future. Understanding, we go back to that because understanding is like acquisition of knowledge. As you discover more entities who help in the existence of Dasein, you are gaining understanding. It's a process where human beings are always going through. They are going through acquiring more knowledge. they're trying to better their lives by doing different kinds of experiment and innovations and link chains just for the purpose of trying to make their lives better in the future. Now, as we have gone into the digital age, artificial intelligence, you can see chat GPS now. People are they're wowing. This gadget which can write your resume better than what you can do. But it can never reach where I am telling you to temporarize and the temporality, ecstasis, the state of existential, ontological, phenomenological constitutions of Dasein. There is a lot of like time travel. I don't see chat GBS. I don't see doing a time travel. I'm thinking when it was doing a league match somewhere in South Africa. It would do some things like writing a resume or something, a topic you give it just to collect from facts from the internet, which other people have put there and trying to assemble it to make some sense. But deep transit, fine thinking, deep cogitation, deep mental gymnastics, thinking moods, anxiety, intuition, doing deep intuitions, concepts, analysis. It'd be hard for it to, like I tell it, can you be solemn and in a state of mourning and write me a state of mourning? Or just feel sorrowful or be in this state of deep love of something. Or just appreciate nature. Just tell me appreciation of nature. Give me some sense of conscience, that inner voice that tells man, you can't do this. You can do this, but you can't do it. This is not ethical. You got to love your brother. The act that Dasein is undergoing under temporality and understanding is called projection towards potentiality for being, which is necessary for Dasein to exist. Potentiality for being is something that Dasein has knowledge of. This is all made possible by the ability or abilities of one's understanding, which translates to abilities to exist. But also, when some lack shows in ability to survive, does not mean lack of understanding. As Dasein acquires knowledge about entities and who they are and if they are appropriate for his existence, the entities have to continually be disclosed for bettering Dasein's existence. Dasein is always throwing or being thrown out there, or immerses itself into entities and checking whether they help in perpetuating its existence. Resoluteness is a form of existence for Dasein. This is true since time. Dasein also is to avoid fear and anxiety in its everydayness. It remains irresolute. This is due to the fact that temporality is not constantly temporizing, so this allows irresoluteness to set in. Dasein is constantly in a state or mood of resoluteness. Why? It has to face its demise of finiteness. The potentiality for being whole is not assured. It knows at a certain time life will stop to exist for it. So it has this anticipatory resoluteness I mentioned in the beginning there when I was opening part 15 of this program. There's an end, there's finiteness. Infinity is only for God. But for us humans, with our the guilt, because Martin Heidegger also accepts we live in deep guilt. And that's why Judeo-Christian religion tells us we have this original sin. And actually, Martin Heidegger might be a believer in Judeo because he believes we are in deep guilt as we exist. And one of the most important things that he mentions that we are resolute about is that guilt. Because it seems the guilt is the one which brings us the finiteness that our lives end. And so in life, we are always addressing ourselves to that finiteness that will come at a certain time. Temporality temporalizes using different forms with different effects on the future. Temporality, you can say temporal. It has something to do with time. Temporal changes. Now 1, now 2, now 3, now 4. The now. And that one changes to past. You are saying 2 hours ago. Then there is now. But the now, we have been in this state of the now, and then it becomes the past. That is historizing. And that's the rhythm of temporalizing, the temporality is what makes us. Without time, there's no being. So essentially, we are actually creatures of time. When time stops, that's the finiteness that is us. Dasein is always in a state of anticipation. This allows the futures to evolve from the present, and this is always temporality temporalizing. Resoluteness is the one which allows the exposure of an authentic future. Inauthentic future is able to be deciphered if we use the route of ontology and look at the inauthentic understanding and look at its using temporality. Now, this is dialectics. If you have read Hegel, the phenomenology of spirit, which actually is the acquisition of knowledge by acquiring consciousness, Hegel went that route. Charles Pierce Sanders, in a solenoid of semiotics, he goes through another route of how we acquire knowledge through the firstness, the secondness, and the thirdness. That means the formation of meaning in sentences using syntax. So you can see those are roots of acquiring knowledge. Solenoid of Semiotics by Charles Pierce Sanders, acquiring consciousness through Hegelian, and through Kantian, the critique of pure reason. That's a book written on how humans acquire knowledge, but they acquire knowledge through reasoning. A critique of pure reason. You acquire a perception from your mother and father, when you are born, you have what knowledge you have acquired through being wired through DNA and information built in you from the two genes of the parents. That's what now Kant is analyzing. A perception, intuition, cognition, thinking, understanding, and language. And on top of this all knowledge, there's nothing that beats the father of them all is language. And that is Rortian. Richard wrote in 1979, the philosophy and the mirror of nature. Language is the most important thing that a human requires to gain understanding. Because you can see all these sentences I'm forming is because of language. And understanding is part of it. And it is the most important state of mind, understanding, falling, and discourse, which is language. They are the ones which make up being and time. We get into that. Resoluteness is the one which allows us exposure of an authentic future. Yeah, I read that one. I think I'm repeating myself. You would excuse me because I think we are running out of the time now. We are at 31 minutes. A scare doesn't is always ahead of itself. As a result of being in the world, in this state, doesn't has its concern clearly labeled. This behavior it acquires as a result of its potentiality for being, or in simple terms, ability to exist. So you can see one thing doesn't has or humans have if is potential for being. It has that energy given by the Almighty to have the potential to exist or potentially to be, because being is existence. And you need entities to allow you to be, who allow you to be. Not what, no, who to be. The entities make you what you are. Actually, I think biologically you can say man is made by the entities who make being what he is the creation of the being, entities that create the being. Inauthentic, I use the word authentic and inauthentic. Inauthentic, in other words, is awaiting for the uncertainty of Dasein. So because you see, as I say, Dasein is always never sure of himself because of finiteness. He comes to an end or she comes to the end. Or you can be neutral and say they come to an end. The existence of Dasein is tied up or linked up with those around it, making it a concern of the they self. This state of mind allows it to forget what awaits him in the future. Now, being communal, now look at this. Being communal gives Dasein the ability to kind of be in denial. In Swahilis, they say, kifo cha wengi ni harusi. If everybody will die, then there is no fear of death because everybody will face it. A thing which affects them all masses starts to be not feared at all. So the other creates confidence in Dasein. As he exists in the world within communal system, a social milieu, he starts to have confidence and denial at the back of his subconscious. Death will come one time, but it's for everybody. So let's enjoy ourselves and live happily from now. That is the side of inauthentic living. It's a kind of a denial. Dasein has this expectation, which is in the realm of awaiting for that end that it cannot avoid. Temporality temporizes awaiting and expecting, and they are outside of self. That's why I told you this term, ecstasis, once outside oneself for itself. Others give it confidence, outside of self, anticipation. In the world of potentiality for being, anticipation translates as the act of waiting for its last days of its existence. And that Martin Heidegger in quotes calls it being towards death. Temporality of state of mind. Now you can see, I said there are four things so important in who entities that make up Dasein are. One, state of mind, understanding, falling, that being there, being tempted, denying, denial, and then discourse, language. You're always in a state of mind, and that state of mind allows you to start understanding things. And to understand things means you start to identify who are the entities that make up Dasein. Then you start to discover he has fallings of everydayness. There is survival for the fittest, and there is end of life. And how do you all these things are connected by what? I said it. They are all possible through language, discourse, communication with others within a community to come to conscience and to care, to anticipate resolutely, but through love, unity, and peace. Care. And always striving to make human life better. Understanding is a variable of state of mind. The state of being there, struggling with existence, is exposed by being in a certain mood. So that's why you see there is anxiety, uncertainty, anticipation, resoluteness, because existence for man is difficult. I think as one thinker or philosopher says, is short and brutal. Life is short and brutal. Having a mood, and many people have sung songs, Otis one of them. Oh, them young girls, they do get weary, weary the same old shabby dress. And when she gets weary, with all them try a little tenderness. It is not just sentimental, no, no, no. She has a grief and care. And while she there waiting, with them not try just a little tenderness. While she's there waiting of things she never, never, never possessed. Yeah. That's Otis, the struggle for men. Even them, young girls, they do get wary, wary of what? Wearing the same old shabby dress. And while she's there, waiting, without even them trying to see how can they help her. So people are made of moods. Having a mood is the one that makes Dasein realize the struggles before him, which in most cases are all related to his struggles pertaining to his existence. Being thrown in Dasein simply means being in a certain state of mind. State of mind also relates to thrownness. Thrownness, you're thrown in the wilderness. Like the Bible says, the children of Israel were in the desert, roaming. And Bob Marley sings, people will be traveling, not knowing where they're going. That's exactly what even Martin Heidegger is dealing with here. Temporal constitution of being thrown into mood. The question becomes, how does this show itself? Present, future, ecstatical unity, and temporal structure through this prism of existence. How does understanding a state of mind look? One's mood has the ability to show off if one is toward the self against the self. You can be against yourself because always there's that contradiction. Should I do this or should I not do it? If you're going to do something bad to your friend, never tell me you never think about it deeply and trying to say, I should not do this. Consciousness will disturb you, conscience. The court of justice for man, Kant calls it, is conscience. It also brings one face to face with that which is repelling Dasein from self or vice versa. Ecstasis outside of self conscious is a consciousness. You're always thinking outside, the things outside, of being in the one which allows face-to-face meeting of throne, which is actually meeting self. Now, you will allow me at this point, because you can even see I'm kind of not really to the point. Now we'll continue part 16. Allow me to stop here.